What's going on, everybody? Welcome to our episode 3 discussion for HBO's The Last of Us. Oh boy, if you haven't seen this one yet, you may just want to take a step back, go watch it, bookmark this, come back, and be a part of the discussion in that way. But a heavy episode here, one that is critically acclaimed across the board. We're going to get into some of those details here, our opinions on the series, on this episode, and where we think it's going from here. I'm Josiah Leroy, as always, with me today, John. It's happening. Baba Yaga, it's taken off.
It's taken off.
It's that one person.
That one
That's all
person.
we need.
That person's name was Baba Yaga. They want to be me.
That's right. You have a
I have an
fan
imposter
page.
out there.
Did you block him? Report him?
No. I befriended
we
him.
embraced it.
I sent him my address.
Guys, send him his government ID.
Baba Yaga meetup.
Give me some Game Pass.
Yes. All right, who do we got tonight, Tim? Coffee Tim? Water Tim? What's going on?
Sake Tim. Oh.
Talk to Tim. Oh, okay.
Sorry,
All right.
I'm quarantined. I can't go get sake.
Huh.
I could open my door. You could squirt it at me from 10 feet away.
Okay. No thanks. Also, with us,
Take it out of context.
I don't want to see this clip on TikTok.
Well, you're gonna.
Mr. John, stop. JT, John Toronto, joining us for the first time. JT, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. Just got the little Hogwarts hoodie going for our good old Hogwarts Legacy coming in a week that John reminded me of 15 minutes ago. So I'm ready. What's up, boys?
10 days away, I think, right? February 10th, right?
Yep.
Cool, good stuff. I hope that game does well. I hope it is very good and worth the wait.
Thanks.
But we're going to talk video games on a different show. Today, we're talking about a video game show, which is, of course, HBO's The Last of Us. We'll give our spoiler-free impressions here for just the first few minutes of this, and then we'll circle around and go and really take a deep dive into all the details of this episode. Thanks for tuning in live at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse, facebook.com/thegeekiverse, and youtube.com/thegeekiverse. Also, you can enjoy this on podcast services around the globe if you'd rather listen to it. So, fellas, I don't even know where to begin. John, first impressions, spoiler free, before we dive in.
Man, what a you said it at the top, man. What a heavy episode. Beautiful episode, man. Like it was beautiful. It was devastating, but I think just way more emotionally impactful than I expected an episode about Bill to be. You know, when we see Nick Offerman cast as Bill, and we know he's going to be in the show, and all four of us having played the game, like we don't think it's going to go this way. We don't think we're going to get a full-on episode love story that just takes place in the middle of the apocalypse. Like I said, man, beautiful, bizarre, hopeful.
This reminded me of the time when Mando hijacked the Book of Boba Fett almost.
Yeah,
Just
for
was
sure.
Like,
This, you know what, this did way more for the story than that did for Boba Fett, for sure. Like this, you know, we get a good amount of development for the world, and for even for our main characters. They have some appearances throughout the episode, so don't bring it down to that level.
Tim, impressions on the episode.
Kind of speechless when the whole thing, after it was over, I was kind of like one of those things where I was like contemplating life. Very deep. I feel like you get a lot of other stuff in the episode, and that whole context of what you see that just gives you a lot more of the world building and a lot more behind, you know, life during all of this. And, you know, you kind of get to see someone's story and how their own story. And then you kind of, like, what I did in my head is I looked at what their story was, how it was so different than what Joel and Ellie's story was that we know throughout the game, and how different they are. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I compared the two to when I was watching this, and kind of, you know, put a lot of thought into. And if I'm being honest here, it was so well done. And I you know, it kind of broke me in a way because it was just so emotional. All it did is scared the shit out of me for what's going to happen in the future with Ellie and Joel, because obviously we all know what's going to happen. And I literally don't think I'm able to handle. I mean, I'm in trouble.
I don't know. I don't know if whatever is going to happen is going to be more emotionally impactful than that. I think that we're up in episode 3 here, but I honestly think this might be the not high point, because that sounds like, you know, the rest of the series won't be good or whatever like that. But I think this might be the best and most emotionally exhausting episode we're going to get. Again, we got plenty of episodes left, and you know we know where the story goes. But I think this might be might be some of the heaviest stuff we're gonna see.
I mean, we'll get into more details, but I think there's a lot of stuff
never mind.
that could rival this.
I just thought about something that I completely forgot about that happens in the middle of the game, and I'm like, oh, dang it, never mind.
So people that play the game, I'm thinking about a character named Henry, and I'm thinking about
Sam.
Yep,
That's
and
exactly what I've been thinking about this entire time.
Also, Ellie's. If you played the DLC for Last of Us,
Oh my god, I forgot we're getting left behind. We're getting Riley.
Yes, that's where I thought this episode was going, because it was really, really built up, and we'll get to that in a sec. JT, we haven't had you on the show yet. If you want to give your impressions of this episode, but maybe also what you've thought about the first 2 episodes in a nutshell too, because I think they kind of correlate. But elaborate wherever you want. The stage is yours here.
Yeah, so I'll kind of combine the first 2, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys talked about it in a couple episodes. I watched you on Twitch or whatever, but they are so good at just showing the game, right? And the biggest thing before we got on this podcast here, like I was telling John, for me, this is the perfect opportunity for people that don't ever play a video game to learn an amazing story, right? So someone like my mom, who she literally is, besides touching it to tell me I can't play it anymore, kid has never touched a controller, right? So she will never get to know a story like this or other stories there that these great games that we love. And she's one of the people that cried like crazy for today's episode, right? And is really into the story, the narrative that they're building through the first 3 episodes. But for me, episode 3 was just, I mean, it was peak television, right? It was real. It was real. It really hit home. We'll get into the details of why I really think that, but they're absolutely crushing it. And we all love The Last of Us. All 4 of us love it. Anybody who's played the game can't tell me, right? I don't know what you say. They're doing better, which I never thought was possible, in my opinion, right? And I'm excited for the other craziness and the more crying I do. And you can't. It was just peak. It really was.
Yeah, well said, JT. I think now is a good time because there's a lot we want to get to. Let's dive into some of the spoilers on this. So if that matters to you, pause it right now and come back to this. But man, Nick Offerman, big fan. How do you not enjoy him across his legacy of work in TV and movies? Just another layer, another level for him. And then someone I was not so familiar with in Murray Bartlett, who played Frank in this. But the story of Bill and Frank, we just to sum it up to people who have not played the game, in The Last of Us for PlayStation, we meet Bill. We don't see Frank, but we get told a little bit of their background. We get some through dialogue. We get some through journals. This was and there was a definitive end in the game to what actually happened. The show veers course and takes it in a different direction. And as Neil Druckmann said, to paraphrase, basically, if it made the series or the story better, that's when they decided to expand on things. And in this case, it made sense to tell the story that they wanted to tell and dedicate an episode to it. So to really have this aside for the vast majority of the episode and tell a different story between Bill and Frank than what we got in the Last of Us video game, it wouldn't have worked in the video game. Joel and Ellie are the focus. They had to be. But in the TV series, when you can take a pause, it works. So to see what we got there, even the early kind of minutes of Bill as soon as the pandemic hits, how he hides underground and he kind of builds up his bunker. He goes to the liquor store. He's having a blast. He kind of likes the idea of isolation. I think all of that was absolutely awesome. It was fun. It brought some light to a really, really dark show. But I could get all over the board with this. I know we're going to get into some of John's notes as well. John, kind of take it away here. What direction we want to go here?
Yeah, so I just want to hop on to something you mentioned, is that like it's a different way of telling the story that we got from Bill and Frank from the game, right? But it's not even just different in the path we get there. So far in this show, they've deviated just kind of ways of doing things just because it made more sense for the narrative, or it's just been additive. They completely changed the destination for these characters, right? Like, Bill's story in the Last of Us game is a depressing, and it is a downer, and it is hopeless. It is someone who has lost everything, and we see that moment in the game. Frank kills himself. We don't see that happen, but we discover his body, right? So, and we watch Bill discover that for the first time. They'd been broken up. You find a letter. You realize that they have been going through some issues. Frank wanted more, and he left, and that was the situation in the game. And he ends up getting infected, and he kills himself, right? And we watch Bill discover that body. That it doesn't get more hopeless than that. It doesn't get more apocalypse and dreary than that. This story was so hopeful. Like, this was like, I listened to the After the Episode podcast, and Neil put it perfectly. They had a happy ending. Sure, we didn't want to see it go that way. It's something that, like, you're begging it to not go that way because it's devastating, and we're gonna get there, of course, and to see them take their lives like that. But it's an absolute win for these characters to be able to live a life like that for however many years. What is it? At least 7, 8, 10 years. I mean, crazy. So to see a variation like that, and to see a story actually pan out and be so, honestly bright in this story is interesting. But yeah, you took my first note right off the bat. You couldn't pull this off in the game. Like you said, you can't go away from the main characters. You're controlling them. You're controlling Joel. You can't spend an hour and 20 minutes with Frank and figure out a story like this. So I love that they just continue to use this new medium to just, like, put a pause on our main characters. And, we talked about every episode so far has opened with a flashback. This was the first one that didn't open with a flashback. Yeah. This one opens up with, hey, here's our main characters. This is where they're going. Here's the rest of the episode, which is a flashback, right? So, like, obviously still true to tone, but interesting there. When we first get Bill and Frank, all I'm thinking about is, like, how close to the source material are they going to take this? Like, are we going to see this relationship transpire, and are we going to see Frank get bit? Are we going to see him kill himself? Even up to, like, the last moment where, where we realize that they're both taking their own lives. Like, I'm like, is Bill somehow going to survive this? And is this how is this like, he didn't take enough or whatever, or something like that, and all of a sudden, Frank passes and he doesn't, and then we do get the grumpy Bill that we're used to from the game. But no, I'm surprised to see that they went in a completely different direction. When they first introduce these two characters to each other, my first thought was like, man, this relationship is moving fast. Like, this is like, wow, this is almost a little uncomfortable how much tension there is here. And then you start to take a step back and realize, like, it's supposed to be that way because that's how Bill feels. Bill's never had experienced this. He's never had a relationship at all. He's never had anybody acknowledge his sexuality, right? Like, we get that line that he's done this once and it was with a woman. So to see, to have Frank come into his life and, understand who he is and recognize that, like, man, the way they pulled off that uncomfortability was crazy stuff.
You know what? It's kind of funny because I was obviously watching my wife, and she has no idea. Like, she has no idea who this person is, where they fit in the story. And, like, again, it's been a while since I played it, so I'm, like, foggy on a lot of, like, what happens, but I know this doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So we're watching it, and there's, like, a palpable tension in the air. And it's almost that tension of, like, is there something else going on? Is Frank going to kill Bill? Like, my wife, when he was playing the piano, was like, oh, like, I'm waiting for the time where he just, like, kills this guy, and now he takes over his whole bunker. But it goes the complete opposite direction, and you kind of realize that, hey, the tension we felt wasn't because, they wanted to kill each other. It's simply something completely different, a different kind of tension. Right. You know what I mean? That eventually breaks. Of the two, that's what happens. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's kind of cool to see the perspective. So.
It's one of those things where you like, just like in the beginning of the series, when we see the whole story unfold through Sarah. Everyone probably thinks that either this show is going to be about Sarah or Sarah's going to get bit, something like that. You put yourself in those eyes of someone who doesn't know this story, you're in for a huge surprise.
I was watching
John, I never thought that, which is funny to think about that perspective. That, for example, this show could have been about Sarah, like, coming in blindly, like that it never occurred to me. That's unique.
I saw a TikTok of someone that never watched the show, just, like, recording their reaction to it. And they shot Joel and Sarah. And then he's like, oh, he sees that Sarah was shot. I was like, no shot to just kill his daughter 30 minutes into the show. Like, had no idea, like, you literally follow her the first entire 30 minutes, and then, bam, like it is crazy. It's crazy how they do that. So
Tim, you were going to say something before I jumped in.
that was it. You were gonna say we're on the same tangent. So
Gotcha.
Beautiful.
Cool.
Let's rewind a little bit. We hopped into the Bill stuff, but like I said, we start off with Joel and Ellie. We get a good conversation there. It's a little different than the one we have in the game, but it's close in a lot of ways. Ellie kind of confronts Joel. They've had this awkward silence. She says, "Hey, listen," and he immediately interrupts her and said, "I don't want your apology." And she's like, "I wasn't gonna apologize. Like, first of all, shut up. Stop being so full of yourself. I wasn't gonna apologize." She kind of like takes control of the situation, and she tells him, "You made this choice. I didn't make this choice for you. Don't be mad at me for something I had no control over." And that's the first time that we see Joel kind of give a little bit. He just kind of shuts up and gives her this little nod like, "You're right. This is not your fault. This is not your thing." So we start to see that, the seeds of that relationship that we know is going to build, and, the backbone of the show here. As they continue on towards Bill's place, we see they stop for some loot, something that I think we were all wondering, like, if they were ever going to address is Joel ever going to get down and start searching through drawers and picking up stuff? And they masterfully do it. He starts just opening up random drawers, and she's like, "You don't know where you put your stuff? It's been a while, kid. Shut up." Like what a cool way to acknowledge the gameplay that we're all so familiar with.
Yeah, I love all that. I love what she finds. That's funny. I think the conversation, to take it back a sec, between Joel and Ellie, where they are starting to build that banter and that little bit of the crack in the armor, so to speak, where there's there's going to be a relationship here, even though they don't want it. I love that, and we got a little bit of playfulness. Of course, the perfect amount of snark in there. I think we're starting to see those two, the actors specifically, build that rapport before our very eyes.
Yeah.
So there's some chemistry there, right?
We're really starting to see Bella Ramsey come into her own as an Ellie. Like, she's not she's not Ashley Johnson. She's not trying to be. She is her own Ellie, and like, man, she's doing a really cool job so far.
And I think
I don't know if you guys talked about through the first 2 episodes. There's a lot of criticism out there, right? Social media of not liking fit. I disagree completely, and maybe it's more of what John said, right? Maybe she's not a better Ellie. She's not but she's different. Right, she's doing it in her own way. She's making her own path, and I honestly had no idea who Bella Ramsey was. I didn't know she Game of Thrones. Right?
Yeah, she was Game of Thrones. That's all I knew her from. I'm sure she's done other stuff.
Yeah, and I'm sure she's done other stuff too. But I didn't watch Game of Thrones, right? So I knew nothing about her at all. But I really took it with an open mindset, and I liked how they, so far, at least with the 3 episodes, they're deviating from the game, and more to what Tim said. I have a complete fog. I haven't played it since PS3.
Wow.
Like I remember the basics, right? I know that Sarah. And all the Bill's husband, or I assumed was husband. They said partner in the game. I knew that the general key concepts and what they were doing, but it's just really cool to kind of see it from an open lens at the same time. Because it's been so long. The looting thing was really cool, John. There's some TikToks too. I think it was like for like episode 2, maybe 1. Joel goes in his backpack. I think him and Tess do it at the same time.
Yes.
And they were like, "Oh my god, they're following just like the game. They're going in their backpacks." Like,
well,
joking, obviously.
No, I saw that TikTok too.
It's with intent, right?
Right.
They keyed on that with camera lens on purpose.
Right? For sure. We talked about it. I think it was episode 1. Like, it was the exact crouch position Joel gets into when you're crafting something in the backpack. Like, it's not a coincidence.
And I love that they make it look so natural. Like, if you didn't know, you would never think twice about it.
For sure.
Yes.
And we've got some more imagery like that later on in the episode. We'll talk about when we get there.
Later, DiCaprio meme where he's like,
"Oh yeah,
right."
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say about Joel and Ellie in the woods, it's kind of, in my mind, very interesting because we know, obviously, playing the game, we kind of know they're 2 separate parts right now. You have Ellie, whose biggest fear is obviously being alone. She doesn't want to be alone. She wants to have someone with her. Like, that's what she wants to be. And then you have the exact opposite in Joel, who doesn't want to get hurt, so he pushes every single person away and doesn't get close to anyone. And you kind of see that with Tess, and like you see that even more like at the end with the letter, and like there's just a lot of that, I feel like. So it's kind of cool to see them, butting heads, trying to see who's going to give first.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Which I loved. So
power trip for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They continue on to Bill's place here, and I do like the conversation they have while they're on the path. Joel kind of just come out and he tells us what happened. Like, we get the most context we ever get about the outbreak, and they confirm some of the stuff that we've seen going around on social media and some of the breadcrumbs that they've dropped, that like this got infected in the food supply. It must have been flour or rice, they say, pancake mix, Joel even mentions. And by Friday, it was on everybody's shelves, and by Monday morning, the world was gone. So interesting way to just tell us that in dialogue that in a video game that doesn't really work. That just seems like exposition that is unnecessary or forced. And in a show, you got to fill time and you got to get the point across. So I think they did a really good job there.
It wasn't done as bad as Say it wasn't done as bad as when in Han Solo when he says, "Yeah, Han." The last name's Solo. It wasn't done that bad where you gotta make it completely obvious. But
yeah, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't as good as somehow Palpatine is returned, but it certainly wasn't. It certainly wasn't as bad as Han Solo.
Whoa, this is not a Star Wars bashing show. Everybody,
I'm just giving a scale. It wasn't
as
as.
This is a Mando advertisement in the middle of our show.
Listen, I haven't played the game in so long, but I feel like, and I know for a fact back then I didn't really key in on every piece of the story and how beautiful it really was, right? Looking back, I probably do, but this is making, like, when I'm done watching these first time an episode, or the season's worth of episodes, I'm going back in. I'm truly appreciating that game more than I ever did. I know because I was just so I think John, you and I talked about, we love this part of the game, right? Just being able to kind of get by. You don't have to fight people if you want to. That's kind of what I focus on: gameplay and fighting and combat and all that. This is making me just want to play it so bad. I'm waiting because I want to get through the 10 episodes and go back. But it's just so cool.
It's no coincidence the game releases on Steam on like March 3rd. So
yeah,
oh yeah,
right.
For sure. That was
planned.
planned.
I do like that they, like you said, they explained really. They gave us the answer finally. Like, this is what happened. There's no guessing. At least this doesn't necessarily translate to the video game story, but like you said, John, this is more than we got there. This set the record straight. So I felt like that was a really, I mean, hey, you're playing the game and you're walking through with Ellie, and sometimes there's a lot of time between destinations, between enemies. That's exactly what that was. So that was that, while filling time and also meaningful time, because it was explaining something which was kind of a lot of people had theorized for a long time on how the pandemic actually spread and what actually happened. So, and then too, like, for what it's worth, not that we want to compare it, but like with the real world pandemic we went through on a different scale, everything they talk about feels so much more scary or real at this time in the world where they're telling this story. So I think kudos to them for making everyone kind of feel the gravity of the situation and making The Last of Us on HBO that much more impactful.
Right. I had something I was gonna do. Okay, so yeah, we're moving on here. The transition to the flashback is really, really well done. So it's another conversation with Joel and Ellie. Joel's like, hey, we don't want to walk that way. There's something up there I don't want you to see. Which we're getting some father vibes here. Joel's starting to feel a little bit protective. Doesn't want this little girl to see something, right? And Ellie, being Ellie, is like, oh, dude, screw you. Now you said that, I have to go see. So she runs up there, and what does she find? Pile of dead bodies. And the conversation they have there is that the government would tell you that you were going to a quarantine zone, and they meant that, but if they got there and there was no room, they would just unload you on the side of the road, and there you go. That's where you're going to die. So you get some harsh reality of humanity in the situation, and then that's where we get our flashback. We zero in on a blouse or a blanket, I forget what it is, and boom, all of a sudden we're back to that person 20 years later, and we're about to be told the story of Bill here. Bill and Frank's first introduction, when Bill traps Frank in the hole there, the line that absolutely killed me was when he's like, I'm not going to feed you because you're going to bring your buddies back and everyone's going to want a free lunch. This isn't an Arby's. And Frank goes, Arby's was a restaurant. They didn't offer free lunch. just perfect cut the tension moment, and just sets up what a perfect character I know that Murray Bartlett is about to portray with Bill here, or with Frank, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was really well done. That was one of my favorite moments of the episode for sure. Even just before that, like seeing some of the how Bill set up all the traps, like that
was fun.
The tripwire was great with the infected. I was like, oh my gosh, and him just getting such enjoyment out of that was really awesome.
The scene by scene.
I love how they took a bit of a whimsical approach to that. It's like, this guy's, he's setting up this fortress, and all of a sudden these tripwires are going off, and he's just in his element, living his best life.
It kind of, speaking like to the video game, and just like speaking as a kid, right? We always, at least me, like joking with friends or family, if the world ever goes to shit and it's a zombie apocalypse, everything Bill did is what I'm doing, right? Like I always told myself, like that's exactly how I'm gonna build my fortress. Like I'm gonna have a bunker. I'm gonna have like the fence around the town. Like it's just crazy how they kind of spoke to that, and they really Bill's a little bit of a
He's a doom prepper.
He's a
Yeah.
survivalist.
Yeah,
guys.
He's a survivalist. There you go. Yeah.
He's
Right.
a survivalist. Come
Yeah,
on.
but just to see that, and like Joe said, just to see that step-by-step approach to prepping himself for that, turning on the natural gas, like all the little stuff.
Right.
And what I was really scared of with this series, and I didn't think HBO would be scared to do it, but we all know Falcon and the Winter Soldier had a pandemic kind of plot line planned, right? But obviously with the COVID pandemic, kind of swayed away. I was scared they'd try to limit how things were operated in this. They're going further.
Well,
Right?
they're leaning into it.
Conspiracies and all this other stuff with it, which is so awesome to see. And I'm glad they weren't scared to do it, because not that I think a zombie apocalypse can happen, but the realism is the pandemic could happen, and don't change it up, right? So
Right.
I think you have to, Jay. I think
You have to.
that's a good point, but I think you have to lean into that. That it's so prominent in this story, right? Where maybe, for example, with Winter Soldier or Falcon and the Soldier, it was not. That was early 2021, so that's kind of a sensitive time.
It was supposed to be
speaking.
basically pre-pandemic. All that stuff was filmed pre-pandemic.
Yeah, so like that was a tough pivot, but you could remove it also and not have it be so like you don't know that it's gone necessarily. But this, it's like,
Right.
oh my gosh, you have to.
this
But-
is no choice, right?
Yeah, I love him going to Home Depot. That's great. He's having a good time, and I was like, I identify with that. He's just he goes to the liquor store. That's all those places. Yeah, sign
Yep,
me up. Or
for
even
sure.
just how he cooks himself amazing meals. Yeah, really awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So back to the first introduction with Bill and Frank. There's just so much good stuff here. When he's got him in the hole, and Bill asks him, "Hey, do you have a weapon on you?" And there's just awkward silence for like 5 seconds, and he goes, "No." It's like, "Why did you take so long to answer that?" He's like, "I thought about lying, but then I couldn't figure out a reason why." Like they set the tone so well for the relationship that these characters are about to build, and then right after that you get into the tension and some of the stuff that Tim talked about in the house, where it's like, is this dude about to ice Bill in his own home and steal his piano? Like, what's going on here? Speaking of piano, we got a thread here. The title of the episode is called Long Long Time, and when Frank takes over the piano, he plays the song Long Long Time by Linda Ronstadt, plays it terribly, and Bill just can't take that. Obviously there's some kind of connection there, we assume maybe with his mother, so he hops in, he sings a song, and that song, much like Future Days and The Last of Us Part 2, that song is now the narrative thread for this entire episode, just like Future Days is the narrative thread through that entire game. So I love the use of music in The Last of Us. I love how they continue to evolve that and find these songs that just mean a lot to these characters and give us reasons for that.
That's a great point, John. I love that too. It's so creative to me. It's artistic. It's like I associate certain songs like Take Me On, for example, and how I associate
100%.
that to The Last of Us. It's different how I associate the awesome mix songs to the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Right, I appreciate them. I identify those as a package deal, but those are kind of fun and whimsical, and this happens and it's serious and it's emotional. So like I don't know. I thought that was almost like a 180 perspective, but all the same, you're still connecting the music to the visual, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I love that narrative beat there. So Bill and Frank are introduced. They form this relationship, and we get a flash forward. I don't know how many years, maybe 2 years, 4 years, something like that. Frank was 3 years. I'm not sure I'm going right there. I think I might be going to the next flash forward that happens. Frank starts talking about, hey, I want to invite people here. I want to fix this place up. I want to express my love, by fixing this place up, which I thought was a really cool argument that two people like this would have. Someone who cares about aesthetics, or someone like Bill who just doesn't understand why you give a shit about that stuff. It just needs to be functional, right? But to see the dynamics of that relationship work out, and to see Bill give, he gives in and lets Frank, do what he wants there. But the coolest part about that whole sequence is the friends that he's been entertaining. The nice lady he met on the radio happens to be Tess. So we see Joel and Tess come by for lunch, and obviously they're there. They're talking shop. They want to establish a relationship and help them, scratch your back, I scratch yours, and establish this apocalyptic relationship of goods. But to see Joel and Tess sit down, first of all, so good to see Tess back. I didn't expect to have that kind of emotional reaction. Keep forgetting the actress's name. She's so incredible. You have it, Joe?
Yes, Anna Torv.
Anna Torv.
Yes, I could not agree more, John. And to see her, because this is earlier, right? So she looks a little more.
She looks awesome.
Everyone looks more clean.
This is like 15
together.
years earlier. Yeah, this is. Yeah.
It was nice to see them kind of sit down, look healthy, and have a nice meal together in that aesthetic, which it's so funny that it's in the middle of this horrible, horrible pandemic, but it just was so pleasant at the same time.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite parts is when he tells Bill, is like, yeah, I've been talking to the Slice lady on the radio and they're going to come over for whatever he says. And Bill's like, you did what?
Yep.
And flash forwards and he's got the gun on the table and he's like, doesn't know what to do with it the whole time. It's so funny to me.
It's so good.
And he's like, oh, I understand. I'm like, oh, you're a psychopath. Whatever he says, like about Bill, I was like, okay, this is awesome.
Get the gun out of my face.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, this is obviously a one-off episode. This is something that it doesn't add a ton to the actual substance of the plot of this, but we are seeing a little bit of like, wait, why does Joel know this random guy who lives in a little bit of a suburb here? So we do get the introduction, which we didn't get in the game. We just know that, Joel knows this guy named Bill in a town and he owes him a favor. That's the entire narrative thread in the game. Like, Bill owes me a favor. And when you get to Bill, he's like, I owe you what? It's like, it's not worth that much, man. Yeah. So we move on. Some of the stuff I wanted to talk about was more of the Joel and Ellie stuff again, just because I think they did a really good job giving us more of that gameplay stuff. So we talked a little bit about the looting, but the one comment Joel makes when they're talking about guns and ammo and stuff like that, I had the quote here. Where'd it go? Oh no, I lost it.
It's the one where he puts the gun in the case.
Oh yeah, so he basically just makes like an offhand comment about like sometimes you miss your shots. You're not gonna hit them all. You need right. And then they're in the bunker there and they're organizing guns. And she's like, "Why are you leaving that behind? It's perfectly good." She's like, "I don't have any ammo for it. I'm not gonna carry it with me." So like more on the nose stuff about the gameplay and things that we're used to.
Just grow anywhere or something like that. He says.
Right. Exactly. Another big thing, like this is and Joel and Ellie, but I love to see the outfit change. I love how they're right. So they're obviously taking so many liberties with this story. They're changing things where it makes sense, but they're staying so true to the details of like the authenticity of these characters, even down to the outfits. So the same outfit you discover Ellie in is the same one she's wearing in the show. Same one she changes into is literally the same shirt. When they pull down that box of clothes that says women's clothes on it, I'm like, oh, the shirt's gonna be in there, isn't it? And sure as shit, the shirt's there. It's the same color truck that they're gonna be in when they head towards Pittsburgh. So all of those little details. Again, I just love how they give us more of that. Like, yes, you played the game. Here are the things that are going to be a payoff for you. So let's
the idea too, John, that they like little things like that also helps with the banter in their relationship. Like they each take a shower. And she's kind of like, you need to take a shower.
Yeah,
like all of that is great.
Right. Yep. Really good stuff. Yeah. So we've covered a lot. Let's talk about the climax. Let's talk about how this whole story ends for Frank and Bill here. So we get another flash forward, and Frank has developed some kind of disease. I don't know if it's ALS. I don't know if it's MS, but obviously some kind of muscular disease where he's having trouble standing, having trouble painting, having trouble enjoying life. Bill is doing a good job taking care of them, but their life has changed very much. And we get to a point in the story where Frank gets himself out of bed in the middle of the night and it says, "Don't worry, I don't want to go down for a nap because this is my last day." And that hits you like a ton of bricks, man, because obviously right away like what's going on. You know that he very much means it. He'd obviously been thinking about this for a very long time, and you don't say something like that very lightly. And man, just to see that performance, Nick Offerman just absolutely break down on the couch like that. And to see that reaction, like that's where I'm like, this is not going to be good. This is going to really hurt. They're gonna pull this off so well, aren't they? And sure as shit they do. They live their last day together. Frank says, just you have to say yes. Love me the way I want you to love me. We have to. This is it. This is my time. Just give me one last day. And once he says that, give me one last day, I'm like, dude, you're gonna put us through this. You're gonna show us this last day. We're gonna sit there with these people. We're gonna watch it all the way through. And they do it, and it's gorgeous, and it's beautiful, and it is one of the. It's full circle, one of the best love stories I've ever seen. on any medium, you know, whether it be video games where this is based off of, or a TV show or a movie. Like, they just do such an incredible job detailing this relationship and bringing it to a close. And the way it closes is, oh, Joe, do you have something?
Nope. Keep going.
The way it closes, no, you're good. Frank asks Bill to crush up some pills, put it in his wine, bring me to bed, and let me fall asleep in your arms. Little does Frank know that Bill did the same thing, crushed up the same pills, put them in his wine, and said, I wasn't going to ask you because I knew you wouldn't let me, but this is it for me too. I've got nothing worth living for after you. You've given me.
I'm satisfied. You were my purpose, which is like,
dude, you've given me a purpose. You were my purpose. Like, he would have just begrudgingly lived this life, and, you know, who knows how long he would have lived without Frank, without an actual reason to live. But he had purpose.
What made me so emotional during it was the ending where he did the wine. He did it. And, like, I was watching, like, some videos on TikTok today, and it's, like, the side-by-side comparison of the
frame by
day first
frame.
met
It's frame by frame.
And, like, frame by frame. And, like, I knew that watching it. Like, I'm not, you know, you would know when you're watching it. And I just getting so emotional, like,
yeah.
And you know, I mean, he's not going to just let it play out like that where he just takes him to bed and watches him die. I mean,
I was
I
on.
didn't know.
Me either.
I didn't know.
I
was
had a feeling like he wasn't going to let it, because that's how I would feel like if I was in his position. Like, why would I want you? Like, what am I supposed to do when you're gone? So I was like, there's got to be something where he's going to do it too. And then he's like, you put him in the bottle, right? And he's like, enough to kill a horse. And
I didn't get there. I was of the mind for some reason that only Frank was going to go. It just didn't occur to me. I was like, nope, that's how it's going to be. And because in my head, we were going to get Bill a little bit more of what we got in the Last of Us video game story.
Right.
So I see your point, Tim. Just, it's funny like that. I just didn't get there. I was like, oh yeah, okay. So this is a great long deviation of a story, but then we're going to get a little bit of time with Bill and Joel and whatever that looks like. That almost ties into the game more. But no, they decided to put a stamp on it right there.
Right.
Which
I
they
appreciate.
should.
That's how it should have been.
It had to.
Yeah, and what's really cool though is we still kind of got that right through the letter.
Yeah.
You know, and
the purpose was served.
To use the resource, everything that they got out of Bill, they still got, right?
Right, exactly.
With a better story behind it. So like they changed it, but it was still in some semblance the same. You know?
For sure. The only thing that's different is that Bill's no longer alive, right? And for all we know, that this in the video game, the second Joel and Ellie walked away, Bill could have gotten shot in the head by somebody. Like, who knows, right? Like, we never. Fair to say that that's a character they're probably not, planning on revisiting in The Last of Us Part 3.
Yeah,
right.
Fair. I mean, it's honestly, it was just such a beautiful love story, a beautiful story of like a guy that clearly he was one of those like guys, the one that would take the least risks ever, right? And he took the biggest risk into loving someone he never. Story built into one of the greatest love stories we'd see on TV, and that we never expect, right? None of us expected to see that love story ever come onto the TV screen because of our experiences within the game. And end up being that and more, and still providing what our main characters needed. It gave everything and more, right? Like it just expanded, and it's continuing to expand the story. I mean, even to like episodes 1 and 2, changing to a hive mind rather than like pollen.
Spores, right?
Spores, right? They're finding ways to really expand the story and make it better. Like I don't want to say, right? And we got to wait for episodes. And John, you may be right that this could be the peak, not in a bad way, but this could be the peak of this series, right? I hope it's not. And if it's not, and it gets better, the argument's there that it's better than the game.
Yeah,
and
right.
John's argument, when is the HBO's game coming out? Like, but it's just beautiful. It really was. It's
the strawberry scene got me too. We didn't talk about that at all, but
the strawberries were
the strawberries, and he's like, I wasn't afraid until, I met you, and that's like a good indication of like, you build up these, because that's what I took from a lot of this is, again, I talked about how after the episode is over, I had like a lot of like thinking like inner thoughts or whatever you want to call them.
A lot of
reflecting. Yeah. And like that's really what the story is about. It's about like how Bill, thought he had everything figured out. He thought he, was happy. He thought he was content being a survivalist and everything that he was doing. And then once he met Frank, it was like, the world had meaning, and he was, his first time in his life scared for another person. and didn't want him to die, didn't want to die because of that person, and just like so much more to it that you see build up through the whole thing.
It's
And
going to
it
be
was a lot.
once we see the climax of what happens with Joel and Ellie, it's going to be a great mirror for what a relationship can offer you, right? So I mean, this was a good example of like what love can give you. So it's all the risk in the world. It's the most dangerous thing in the world to expose yourself into love like that. But that was Bill's reason for living. He wasn't afraid. He would have been fine dying any day, but instead Frank walks into his life, and now he has a reason to live for these extra 20 years, right? Joel and Ellie, we're gonna get a very different take on what love can do, and than what love drives and the decisions it makes you make, and the impact it has on you. So I'm very excited to have that conversation. I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't played the game, but we're gonna get a very different take on on what love can do to you.
Oh, sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
The strawberry moment is what I almost broke in for like 5 minutes ago, but I don't want to ruin that kind of train of thought. That the garden there and they eat the strawberries, that's probably my favorite moment actually of the episode, because it kind of showed that life can still exist in a way, and there can be rebirth and there's all these beautiful symbols and bits of symbolism, and the way they eat the strawberries and just kind of giggle like a bunch of boys, I thought was pretty funny. And
Amazing.
so like it's like they really nailed that, like a bunch of goofballs there, because they were just giddy that they were able to grow some good tasting strawberries in all of what's going on in the world and what had been transpiring for years on end. So that moment to me was maybe my favorite, aside from some of the comedy when they first meet.
For sure.
But even there, they put the comedy in, like the comment of, "Oh, I traded a gun for some seeds." He's
Which
like,
gun?
"You got traded one of my gun." "Oh, it was a small one. Don't worry." Like, just like the comedy aspect of it, you still get Bill.
It's their relationship.
Then it's in like this heartfelt moment. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so well done.
Yeah, their relationship is excellent.
Yeah, it's the symbolism of, in the middle of a pandemic, the world is ended essentially, right? The least vulnerable man became vulnerable and opened himself up to a new life with someone that, like the man, like for me, what really touches me, there's people in the world that don't want to open up and aren't vulnerable to the world, like Bill. But love can still change that, and we're going to see that same thing happen to Joel, right? I expect that in this series when it comes to Ellie, and again, not to spoil the game, but we're going to see that love truly always wins, right? And it doesn't have to be love
for better or worse. For better or worse.
For better or worse, right? And depending, but it's that is just beautiful in many ways, and I think they're going to do it differently with Joel and Ellie, obviously, and not in a non-partner sense, obviously, but just in general, just seeing how those love stories, in a way, can still survive in the middle of something like this. It's just crazy to see it differently for one, and just see it continue from the game.
I don't think you see a deviation on the story with Joel and Ellie. I don't think they changed the way that ends.
So what I mean is, I just think we're going to see a different love story for them than obviously Bill and Frank.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Their love story is going to be truly built, maybe the same as the game. There's no reason to deviate from that. But it's just to be able to do that in something like this, right? It's just crazy to see.
For sure. So that's the end of Bill. That's the end of Frank. Right after that, Joel and Ellie, they arrive at the homestead there. They get in. Joel obviously knows something is up right away because Bill's not at the gate. There's nobody at the walkie. Like this isn't very Bill. Like something's gone wrong here. So they get there, and Ellie discovers the note, and that note's heavy, man. Obviously, it's written from Bill about the impact that Frank had on him, and he lowers his guard a little bit and says, "Joel, I don't necessarily like you, but for some reason we have a lot in common. We seem to get along. Like, we've made this relationship work. And I know everything I just did here with Frank, and the fulfillment I've had with Frank is what you need to do with Tess. So make sure you protect her. Use everything here to protect Tess." And boy, does that hit, man. I mean, after obviously knowing what we know, the way episode 2 ended, and having Tess obviously no longer be there, but all of those words ring true. And they resonate with Joel, obviously, because he knows he has another purpose and he has something right in front of him to apply all of that to, and that's going to be Ellie.
Second, when Ellie was reading that, I'm thinking, okay, maybe Joel and Bill spoke on the walkie before, like off screen, right? And the letter was about Ellie, because I totally forgot about Tess for a second. and then it says test, but then you just see, just like you said, John, everything that's said, just put Ellie's name there instead, right? That's your new purpose. You have a reason to live. You're gonna fall in love with this girl as a daughter like Sarah, and that's your new purpose. It's like what we know is gonna happen, and it's kind of like a foreshadow for people that haven't played the game, right?
Third time's the charm, Joel. Third time's the charm. Don't.
I,
It is. It is.
I think one of my favorite parts is the music, because I didn't ever realize that till shortly after, as they're playing the '80s radio, which, that's the hidden code. So at the beginning of the first episode, or at the end of the first episode, Ellie's like trying to decode the radio, and it's playing '80s music, and it means danger or whatever they decide. And to find out that he just had the '80s music playing the whole time, so it couldn't have been that long after that. So right when they were leaving is when this all kind of transpired. So.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we're talking the same timeline. Yeah, it was good. It's good. I'm glad you brought that up because it was cool to see them kind of establish that little code. Like it was almost like a throwaway line. It's like we should establish a little code. '80s means trouble or whatever. And yeah, to have that playing on loop. So obviously Joel and Tess would come check it out and see what they find is a cool way to connect that.
Did one cool thing I think we didn't talk about the shootout. From the Raiders.
Yes.
So it visually that was really good looking. Like John, you said it last episode of this. They get the lighting aspect right. Whether it was the flame that is flying by or even the rain, all of it is so well done. Or the flashlight that kind of goes by the window. I thought all of that cinematically was just astounding. And then did anyone ever have any doubt whether or not Bill was going to make it there? Because
yes.
I mean,
I didn't just because I know where the story's going, and I'm like, you can't deviate that much. But I could totally see why somebody who doesn't know the story would, because they did set that up a little. Like this seems pretty permanent. Like Bill is like talking like he's on his way out here, and they don't seem to be giving any outs about this. But then all of a sudden, it's just kind of he wakes up and everything's good, and then Frank's the one who's in the wheelchair.
When I saw the person in the wheelchair, I thought it was Bill.
So did Courtney. Yeah, Courtney did as well.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought that it was an interesting contrast there and kind of a bait and switch too, whether you had played the game or not. Just one more little bit of tension where you don't know what's going to happen there. But Rashawn, we love you too.
Can we talk about the fact that Bill spent all this money and time fortifying his entire area and then walks out in the middle of the street with a gun and just stands there and fires at these guys?
Hey man, it's a video game. They're going to miss. You can take a couple shots.
It's so funny to me. He's like in the middle of the
Yeah.
Okay.
He did not get the duck mechanics sound very well there.
No, but he did get the Nathan Drake luck meter.
Yeah.
Where just nobody's hitting him. You're just running around. You're good to go, man.
Yes, he did. Love that. John, any other notes? Anyone else?
I think we've gotten to the end here, boys. I think that's man, what an emotional episode. What a cool deviation from the story. Something that was just like absolutely additive to this story that we are all so familiar with and so in awe of. If they keep adding stuff like this and they give us another version of Left Behind, that makes me emotional. And man, Sam and Henry that I totally forgot about until we brought it up.
Yeah.
This series is going to continue to keep delivering.
Ellie took a gun and put it in her bag. I don't know if that happened.
She did. I don't think it does it?
So no, I don't think so either. So that might be a little deviation of maybe we see her use that a little sooner. I mean, you see her again. We didn't talk about her just
stabbing
cutting
the clicker.
Stabbing the clicker right in the head, like
Right.
I jumped during that when that clicker moved its head a little.
Yeah, it was tense. Very tense moment.
I jumped embarrassingly like a lot. It was like, whoa. It was not a little one.
I am mad that she didn't steal the adult magazine and open it in the truck and I love that. I love that moment in the game. I love that little her messing with Joel. Like, what is this? Like, the silliness. And then she's like, why are the pages so sticky? And she's like, I'm just fucking with you. And she chucks it out the window. I love it so much. I wish we would have got that, but there's only so much time.
For sure. I think they wanted to probably keep the emotional undertones flying on this one. Closing thoughts, John. You kind of gave us your thoughts there. Tim, anything that we missed here?
No, I just think I'm excited for more. I feel like I say that every week. So it's the first time I've been excited for a show in a long time where it's like, again, appointment viewing since Obi-Wan. It's my first time since then. I'm like, all right, I'm sitting down here like 9:15, like, all right, got to make sure my wife's not going to fall asleep in bed again so I can watch it tonight. So
really thought with the way this was hyped and what we knew about from friends who had reviewed this and seen this before it was out, I really thought this was going to be left behind. I was like, no, that's where we're going, right? We're talking about emotions and how high the impact is. So to know that is still ahead, plus the Henry and Sam stuff, plus the climax of the actual mainline story, keep those Kleenex handy. JT, final thoughts? Anything we missed on this episode?
No, I mean, we think we got it pretty good. I'm nervous. I really am.
Yeah.
I'm excited, and it's just so exciting to have that show to watch every Sunday night. I haven't had a show that, like, I usually just wait on Hulu and watch it or something, right? Like, it's just cool to have that set time that the wife and I can sit down and watch it, enjoy it.
It's the best. Like, there's no argument anymore between the binge model and the appointment viewing model. Like, sure, there's some shows that it works for, but man, this weekly water cooler moment, like, HBO understands that, and they crush it. They have the right kind of directors to cater towards that, to give you the highs and lows at the beginning of the episodes, the cliffhangers. Like, oh man, they know what they're doing.
Going crazy
more, right? It leaves you on that next. I want more. I'm craving it. You know, and
I just want to go to sleep and wake up on Sunday at 9 p.m.
Seriously.
I would say that I enjoy the rest of my week, but
I have nothing else to look forward to. It's all I want right now.
Fair.
John found his purpose, and it's HBO's The Last of Us.
I found my purpose.
So guys, yeah, I wake up on Sundays, and especially, I mean, this past Sunday was weird, right? Because like I was excited for thinking about the Last of Us, and even though that was really far away, no football, really, well, no Bills, I should say. So like that was a weird one to have to not have anything to hold me over until we got to 9/9/15 there. So yeah, Tank, you're right. Buffalo Sabres, damn straight.
That is something to look forward to. That's a good point. But it's the All-Star break, so it's a good time. I got one more game left, and I can go to sleep and wake up on Sunday.
Yep.
That is very true. All right, well, folks, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of our review of HBO's The Last of Us. We'll look forward to another episode next week when we talk about episode 4. So for John, for JT, and Tim, I'm Josiah. We'll catch you then, and have a good rest of your week.
Bye-bye.